You join us for the 2016-17 FF2M Asia series and the fourth meeting taking place at the Dubai Autodrome located in the United Arab Emirates. And we're basically past the halfway point of the season so far. It's been an interesting season so far. The battle of the two hotly contested French drivers. Championship leader is Esteban Ocon, who has won all three sprint races this season so far, alongside Pierre Gasly, who has won just the one race. That was the very first meeting at Kuala Lumpur. And he sits on 26 points, just 3 points behind Esteban Ocon, who's on 29, and in third in the championship after a very good weekend for Genjo. That's how you're supposed to pronounce it due to the Chinese naming system, but Genjo won the Sakhir Grand Prix feature race and raced well in the sprint race, and he sits third in the Drivers' Championship on 23 points. As for the team's championship, it's Willows Jr. who lead by 12 points from Spaniel Racing, 42-30, and STV sit third. There's a look at the circuit, quite an underrated circuit, with plenty of interesting corners to choose from, and it's the full layout that we are racing on. Last season was dictated a little bit by tyres, but in any case, they should expect the same this time around. Esteban Ocon will start from pole position, effectively extending his championship lead over Gasly. Benjamin Pryor is on the front row alongside him. Then it's Itsuki Yoshida third ahead of Lance Stroll, qualifying quite well this time round in the other Spaniel. Then it's Genjo fifth ahead of Charles Leclerc sixth. Lucas Auer up in seventh, good effort from him, ahead of Callum Ilott in eighth place. Then Chuck Bucknam ninth ahead of Pierre Gasly. More on Chuck Bucknam in a moment as we complete the rest of the grid, which consists of George Russell 11th, Pascal Wehrlein 12th, Nick De Vries 13th ahead of Mitch Evans 14th, then Daniel Kvyat in 15th ahead of Antonio Giovinazzi in 16th place. Jack Aitken starts 17th ahead of Maz in 18th, then the final four, Sergei Sorokin in the other Monolith Racing System 19th ahead of Alexander Albon 20th. He raced well last time out, but not qualifying so well this time around. And then the back row featured by Pietro Fittipaldi and Santino Ferrucci last. So the return of Chuck Bucknam, he was absent in the previous meeting at Bahrain, but he's returning this time around. But the five lights go out and looked as if it was a good start from Esteban Ocon from pole position. Pryor also getting away quite well, and Itsuki Yoshida a little bit less so because Genjo Se is trying to make it three wide into the first corner, but sensibly backing out of that one as Esteban Ocon leads ahead of Benjamin Pryor, and further back Santino Ferrucci going side by side with Alexander Albon, who's not had the great start and is battling for last place. Meanwhile at the front it's Ocon, who you can see is on the hard tyres, but Pryor's on the hards as well. Se is on the softs, so should be expecting him to go quite well. As through the exit of the first sector pretty much onto the back straight, and Benjamin Pryor is in the slipstream of Esteban Ocon. Can he make a move? He's looking up the inside on the back straight into the tight right braking zone, and inside and taking the lead is Benjamin Pryor, and forcing Esteban Ocon wide. Is Genjo going to take advantage of that? Not quite, as we scroll through the rest of the field. And they've all gotten through the first lap pretty sensibly so far, although you may see incidents a little bit later on. So, Genjo looking to challenge Esteban Ocon for second. As we enter pretty much the final sector, there's a left-hand long hairpin at this point of the circuit, followed by a bit of a right. It's basically an acceleration zone into the final corner. Turn right, there's the pit lane entrance on the right-hand side there, and then the final corner, Ocon just keeping guard of Genjo going into the final corner, but onto the main straight, and it's Benjamin Pryor who leads, but here comes Genjo on the move on Esteban Ocon into the first corner. Ocon does have some slipstream courtesy of Pryor in front of him, but side by side through the first corner, and further back Chuck Bucknam returning after being absent for the FF2M Asia meeting at the Sakhir Grand Prix circuit, because he was racing in FF3M, battling with Daisuke Sakhir for the championship, and Chuck Bucknam ended up winning the FF3M championship, so he's back in FF2M Asia now. And Genjo now up the inside into the hairpin after the back straight and taking second place. And further back, Leclerc looking to make a move on Yoshida. Yoshida on hard tyres and could be struggling a bit for grip. The softs were very effective at Dubai last season, and the hards were less so. So I could expect to see the likes of Say challenging for the win, maybe Bucknam and Leclerc as well. De Vries in 9th, the next of these soft tyre runners. And then Stroll has had a terrible start. He was 4th on the grid, but he's now down to 10th, so bad start for the Canadian. Obviously qualifying well because he was on softs for qualifying, but you run the hards for the feature race, and so far it looks as if the softs on Segenjo are paying off well because he's alongside Benjamin Pryor into the first corner and takes the lead for the GRM Junior. A bit of a resurgence in form for Segenjo after the past couple of seasons he's had. There's some brake lockups in the background. Look like Mitch Evans getting a little bit out of shape. It could be Jack Aitken as well, and I think Pierre Gasly's in the mix as well. Gasly not having a good qualifying and down in 14th at the moment. And similarly, Daniel Kvyat's having a disaster of a race, and it's just going to get worse as he tags the back of Pietro Fittipaldi into one of the corners. It's difficult to know the corner names here. I should really have drawn a map for this circuit, as is that Pascal Wehrlein making a move on Lucas Auer. Well, he's behind Lucas Auer and looking to try and make up a few positions. That's Ocon versus Pryor into the first corner. That's a very close manoeuvre there, and the side-by-side battling away, but Ocon takes second off of Pryor. Ocon looking to further extend his championship lead with Gasly so far down the order, and so far it's not going too badly. But Segenjo has just rocketed into the distance. He's some 6.6 seconds ahead of Ocon as they start lap 6, all the sixes. The number of the racing driver, as Chuck Bucknam took third from Pryor. Now Nick De Vries looking to make a move on Charles Leclerc into the back straight hairpin, and he's just about got that one as De Vries moves up into 5th. So it's worth mentioning that the FF4M Winter Series is starting here. More on that in a moment, as we have a look at one of the Gajera 2s making a move up the inside of a Shake and Bake Junior. That's George Russell versus Lucas Auer. An hour dropping back because Gasly has now taken 11th off of the Austrian. And up the inside here, is this Ocon versus Bucknam for second? And that is indeed second for Chuck Bucknam. Now can he set off after Segenjo? Callum Ilott versus Itsuki Yoshida for the final point. Let's have a look at this move. He's going to choose the outside line down the back straight, and he's going to get the door shut on him surely. Indeed, that happens. Now he's going to have to keep watch because there's a Gajera 2 nibbling the back, and that has dominoed him into Yoshida, and poor old Yoshida, who's had a dreadful return to FF2M, just loses 3 positions thanks to what happens there. I think it was Russell getting a bit friendly with Callum Ilott. And then Ilott, that speed boost careening him into Yoshida, and Yoshida's now dropped behind Jack Aitken and Nikita Mazepin. Terrible race for Yoshida so far. Now, what have we got here? This is De Vries versus Ocon for 3rd place. Ocon starting to struggle now on his hard tyres, and Pryor similarly struggling. He's lost position to De Vries, and De Vries gaining another one at the expense of Ocon. Now, Leclerc versus Evans into the first corner. Aggressive defence from Charles Leclerc, but not enough because Mitch Evans moves up into 6th place. And we got a pit stop coming up. I think that's Benjamin Pryor coming into the pits. Yes, so he's choosing the early pit stop. And no doubt that could give him track position over some of the drivers in front of him. Probably Ocon, but old tyres towards the end may affect the Welshman. So yes, the FF4M Winter Series, it'll be the first meeting here of the 2016-17 FF4M Winter Series, the second of its kind. The previous one, 2015-16, saw, you see, the first driver, the one who wins the championship, go straight into FF3M, whereas some of the others behind will go into the normal FF4M season. Last season it was won by South Africa's Junior Davison, and currently racing in FF3M, and didn't do too badly in his first season. And the winner of this season's FF4M Winter Series will go straight to FF3M, where they'll be joining the likes of 9 drivers from the 2016 FF4M Championship From each region, the FF4M Nippon series, the top 3 was Rokashion from Wuxi, China, Motoharu Hoshino from Funabashi, Japan, and Satoru Takamaki from Kitakyushu in Japan. And then the FF4M Panam series, the top 3 were Alfonso Moreno from Belo Horizonte, Brazil, Kristen Lunga from Portland, Oregon, and Ricardo Monteiro from the Cachambi district of Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. And lastly, the FF4M Europe series, the top 3 were Jorge Diaz, one to watch I have to say because he was very, very dominant in his championship victory there. He's from Tijuana, Mexico. Then second and third were Marco Żmiak from Gruson in South France, and James Tennant from Lowestoft, the UK, Britain's most easterly mainland point. There's your little fact of the day. Now we're in the midst of the pit stops. That is Nick de Vries making his pit stop. Pryor, Russell, Sirotkin and Stroll have all made pit stops as well. As out of the pits, there was a good stop, 5.4 seconds for de Vries. And where can he rejoin? Can he rejoin ahead of Benjamin Pryor? Yes, he can. That is 6th place for de Vries. Pryor choosing the early pit stop to try and gain some advantage over the likes of Ocon, particularly Ocon actually, because they're both on the same compound of tyres. And yeah, Pryor looking to try and do something about it, but he'll have pretty worn out tyres come the end. Now, we've got the two Gajera 2s coming into combat with each other. There's a car exiting the pits in front of them, but for the moment, Russell takes a position away from Kvyat, who has yet to stop, and just confirming what a dreadful race he's having. Is into the pits. That's Chuck Bucknam from 2nd place. Can he do something about Ginjo Sei, race leader? I doubt it, because Sei has been absolutely dominant, just like he was at the Bahrain GP feature race, and really on a motor. He's the 2013 FF2M champion, is Sei Genjo, and he has been knocked around from pillar to post, but seems to have found a good home in GRM Junior, giving him another chance, because Sei was racing in the FGT3 Super Cup series from 2016 and didn't actually race in FF2M at all, so good form. As Pryor gets out ahead of Bucknam, look at that. Pryor's undercut works, but Bucknam on these soft tyres, fresher soft tyres, must surely catch up to Pryor very quickly and overtake the STV driver. Meanwhile, I think Giovinazzi was coming into pits, and we have got Fittipaldi versus Gasly down the back straight into the hairpin, and that's a bit of a no contest because Gasly having pitted for new softs ahead of Fittipaldi, who has yet to stop. So, like I say, no battle, but here is a battle for position. It is Benjamin Pryor versus Chuck Bucknam for 6th place. Could be a little bit further up once other drivers make pit stops, but that's Nick de Vries making a move on Charles Leclerc. De Vries has stopped, Leclerc has not, but those two have, and it is advantage Chuck Bucknam for 6th place. And could well be a net 2nd once Ocon, Evans and Leclerc make their pit stops. I think this is Leclerc's teammate we're on board with. It's Lucas Auer being overtaken by Pierre Gasly right there. And that's for 9th place. Could be points for Gasly. Jack Aitken has yet to pit and could be dropping down the order. Meanwhile, that's Chuck Bucknam versus Charles Leclerc for 5th place. That's into the hairpin at the exit of the back straight. And now more moves. Looking at Callum Ilott versus Lucas Auer, and then Nikita Mazepin versus Fittipaldi, and another driver getting involved. That could be George Russell. It is George Russell. So Fittipaldi losing 2 places on all tyres. Must surely come into the pits some point over the next few laps. I think Ocon's just pitted. He's just dropped down behind Evans and De Vries. There's confirmation of that. Ocon into the pits and immediately dropping behind Leclerc and Pryor. So Ocon's got some distance to make up, but he'll have 5 laps fresher tyres than Benjamin Pryor, so that's his main target as we look at the shake and bake junior of Lucas Auer. Under pressure from Nikita Mazepin and George Russell. Both of those two have stopped. Lucas Auer has not. An hour continuing for another lap, hoping to get fresh tyres and maybe pinch the fastest lap points. Maybe that's the thinking. I think Sei Genjo is more likely to get the fastest lap because he's not yet pitted and he's on softs. and comfortably in the lead over Nick de Vries. Nick de Vries now a net second, and Buckingham a net third, I think. So, Alexander Albon, there he is, going past Fittipaldi round the outside in the opening sequence of corners. Fittipaldi really struggling on those old tyres as Albon immediately catches up to Auer and Russell. That's the battle for 12th. And having a look into the corner before the back straight, that is quite an interesting attempt, but obviously not going to work, and going around the outside will obviously not work. That's going to put you under pressure from Albon, but for some reason Albon chose the wrong side there, and now Russell's on the correct side, the inside, into the hairpin, and he gets that position. I feel like that was a missed opportunity for Alexander Albon, but he follows through past Auer. Now can he catch up to George Russell as we have a look at Fittipaldi versus Auer. Both of these two struggling on old tyres, and Antonio Giovinazzi's coming into play and trying to take advantage of these battling duo. Fittipaldi battling Auer, and that's Fittipaldi's teammate into the pits from the race lead, Seguenjo, as he turns right into his pit box, consisting of GRM Junior mechanics. And is it going to be a quick stop? It certainly is. Less than 5 seconds. Definitely the fastest of the race so far. As he exits the pits, should still be in the lead over Nick de Vries. It's not a particularly long pit lane. You do bypass a lot of the final corner. And de Vries only had crossed the line, so he has chopped the gap down quite significantly, but say on much fresher tyres than de Vries, will motor off into the distance once again as Charles Leclerc finally comes into the pits. Just as in Sepang, Charles Leclerc leaving it very late before his mandatory pit stop, and that's going to drop him down quite a way down the order. He's lost position to Gasly, Evans. Is he going to lose a position to Ilott? Let's find out as Leclerc exits the pit stops. 1.3 seconds slower than Seguenjo. It's 11th, so he has lost position to Ilott and Mazepin, but he stays ahead of George Russell. And we are looking at Mazepin versus Ilott. This is for 9th place. It's now 8th place because Jack Aitken is into the pits for his mandatory pit stop, and Nikita Mazepin is going to move into the points for Liquid Target. Liquid Target yet to score a point this season, and I know in the last FF2M Championship they had a wretched season. And with Luca Giotto and Nikita Mazepin, I don't think either of them scored points. So Mazepin could be scoring Liquid Target's first points since the last FF2M Asia series. As we have a look at a Willows Junior, is that Charles Leclerc versus Callum Ilott for 9th place? It is indeed. Leclerc 10th, Ilott 9th, crossing the line to start their 22nd laps respectively, but up the inside of Ilott goes Leclerc. And if he carries on like this, he could be breaking Liquid Target's heart by pinching points off of the struggling team. Now then, what have we got? Ocon versus Pryor. This is the battle between the two hard-tired cars. And Ocon round the outside. Look at that. And can he make that one stick? He certainly can. Look at great move there from Esteban Ocon to move him to 4th place. But he's quite a way behind Buckingham, so I think he'll be settling for that 4th. And with Gasly down in 7th, that's okay, but with Seguenjo in the lead, that's less okay. And was that Leclerc taking Mazepin? It was. This is how Leclerc moved up into 8th place, gets a good run on Mazepin down the main straight. Not much of a braking zone into the first corner, but Leclerc has more than enough to outbrake the Russian driver into the first corner and take that 8th place. What have we got? That's an STV versus... It's Pryor versus Evans. Pryor now struggling on those old hard tyres, and as a result, Mitch Evans taking 5th place in that monolith. Good run from Evans as he... Can he do something about Esteban Ocon, I wonder, on his soft tyres? I'm not sure, actually. But we now have a look at the two Willows Juniors going into battle for 7th and 8th place. If they're not careful, then that will put Mazepin back into the points. But I'm sure these two will cooperate. So going into the final corner, and that was a look from Leclerc on Gasly. Gasly was one of the earlier drivers to pit for new tyres and probably struggling a bit now. Here comes Leclerc looking to take that 7th place off of Pierre Gasly. And and outbreaks the Frenchman into the first corner to take that 7th place. Now, can Leclerc do something about Benjamin Pryor for 6th place? I wouldn't put it past him. The gap might be more than 12 seconds, but they're at the exact opposite end of the spectrum, not just in compound, but on tyre age as well. Ilott struggling now because he's dropped down to 11th behind Jack Aitken. And meanwhile, that's a liquid target again, is it? I think, yes, it is. Nikita Mazepin versus Jack Aitken for 9th place. So the fact that Mazepin was able to get quite high probably was down to an earlier than usual pit stop, but now he's struggling because here comes Jack Aitken up the inside and outbreaks the liquid target into the first corner for 9th place. And meanwhile, the gap between Pryor and Leclerc, it's 5 laps to go for those two, and Pryor's got it safe because he's maintains more than an 8-second gap, but maintaining a lead of over half a minute. That's just how dominant Seigenjo has been. Once again, out of the final corner to take his 2nd win of the season, the Chinese driver Seigenjo for GRM Junior. Good effort, and that will put him thick into championship contention. And as for the rest of the results, it's Nick de Vries who will finish 2nd for Danish Racing. And good effort from him. He's certainly outshining Pascal Wehrlein in the other Danish racing car. And Chuck Bucknam, having missed the Sakhir Grand Prix meeting, returns to the podium almost immediately with 3rd place. Esteban Ocon 4th, quite a lonely 4th in the end, and Mitch Evans was certainly catching up to him, and he was driving for Medsign 7, not Monolith. My apologies there. But Evans takes a well-earned 5th ahead of Benjamin Pryor, and Pryor on the softs will surely not repeat his sprint race performance at the Sakhir Grand Prix, because that was a dreadful one. So he'll be a bit more mindful of that. And completing the top 8's the 2 Willows Juniors of Charles Leclerc and Pierre Gasly. All 22 cars finished this particular race, so good reliability and quite relatively few incidents. It was good driving all round. I didn't see that many spinners in the end. And that just shows you how dreadful Lance Stroll's race was. Started 4th on the grid, finished 21st on pace. Hopefully, for his sake, he'll do a lot better in this sprint race. But yeah, not a good showing there from Lance Stroll. And it's Esteban Ocon who is actually tied in the championship lead from Seigenjo, 36 points each. And Pierre Gasly's poor race means that he's dropped back from those two, although from pole position he'll get a chance to regain some lost ground, even if it is on the hard tyres. Chuck Bucknam up to 4th, and Nick de Vries in 5th. And then Charles Leclerc, having dropped behind those two drivers due to a tricky race, a tricky meeting so far for Willows Junior, but they still hold on to the championship lead over Spaniel. The gap now 8 points between those two teams, and GRM Junior, thanks to Seigenjo, rocket up to 3rd, and yeah, definite threat for the team's championship, having overtaken OLM Racing and STV Racing. And as for the rest of them, it's, well, Liquid Target's still yet to score points, unfortunately, but it's fairly competitive between the whole field. So that was the feature race, and naturally the sprint race will follow. Stay tuned for then.